The first thing I want to do is welcome you back to the Legacy of Survival channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that right now, because this channel exists to preserve the real, unvarnished lessons of history that still matter today. What you're about to hear isn't sanitized classroom content. These are the hard-earned insights pulled from prisoner-of-war camps, forced marches and internment sites across Europe and the Pacific. For 1 minute, let me set the stage so you grasp the weight of what these men endured and why their lessons still matter for anyone who studies conflict or prepares for worst-case scenarios. When WWII soldiers were captured, the battle didn't end. It changed shape. The front line became the daily struggle for calories, warmth, dignity, and sanity. There were no manuals, no guarantees, and no margin for error. Guards controlled every inch of space and every ounce of food. Fellow prisoners, some broken and some hardened, became the only real teachers. In that pressure cooker, men learned truths about human limits that even seasoned infantry training had never touched. What survived wasn't just courage. It was technique, method, tactics you won't find in traditional military doctrine. These were the survival hacks passed quietly between bunks or whispered during forced labour details. Brutal lessons that kept men alive when the world had written them off. With that foundation set, let's move straight into the real knowledge. One lesson soldiers learned was that pacing energy could make the difference between collapse and endurance. Guards often forced prisoners into labour or marches designed to break them. But, experienced POWs understood that burning energy early was a fatal mistake. Veterans of camps developed a deliberate rhythm. Short breaths through the nose to conserve moisture, controlled steps and micro-rests that looked like momentary stumbles but were incredibly calculated. In a modern context, you can apply this during long endurance challenges or fieldwork by adopting the same controlled pacing. Slow your breathing deliberately, regulate movement instead of reacting to adrenaline, and honestly preserve glycogen rather than wasting it in early exertion. Another brutal truth was that psychological composure mattered just as much as physical strength. Guards knew despair was a silent weapon. Experienced prisoners taught newcomers how to compartmentalize fear, anchor themselves in routine, and maintain small mental rituals that prevented emotional collapse. Some repeated quiet phrases, others mentally reconstructed familiar places back home, but the aim was the same: keep the mind from slipping. Today, this translates into crisis management training, controlling inner dialogue, breaking overwhelming situations into smaller segments, and assigning yourself tasks that generate a sense of control, even when resources are limited. A third lesson involved mastering the art of hidden observation, because information was as valuable as food. Veterans in the camps tracked guard rotations, weather shifts, food delivery patterns, and even which guards were predictable versus volatile. They watched without appearing to watch. This wasn't dramatic espionage, it was survival, because knowing when a guard was distracted could be the difference between accessing water, adjusting clothing, or sharing contraband food. For modern survivalists, this means cultivating situational awareness at a granular level. Track patterns in your environment, Note human behavior shifts and document small details that others overlook. The fourth lesson was learning how to make alliances wisely, not widely. Camps weren't places of universal brotherhood. Trust was earned slowly and carefully. Seasoned POWs taught that one dependable ally was better than 10 unreliable ones. They form micro-teams for sharing scraps, guarding sleep, and exchanging information. You can practice this today by building small, dependable networks during training exercises or expeditions. Create partnerships where responsibilities are clearly shared and where loyalty is measured by actions rather than optimism. A difficult fifth truth was that food management required almost scientific discipline. Rations were pitiful, and newcomers often ate everything immediately out of hunger or panic. Experienced prisoners knew how to ration down to the crumb. They chewed slowly to stimulate satiety, saved small portions for later energy needs, and learned which foods guards occasionally discarded that could be safely retrieved. So, the modern application is actually pretty straightforward. Practice portion control during your training, get a sense of how your body reacts to different caloric loads, and, rehearse those slow-eating techniques that help reduce the psychological feeling of starvation. The sixth lesson, if you can believe it, was the subtle craft of clothing management. Prison clothing was thin, often lice-infested, and never replaced. Guards rarely cared if a man froze. So POWs learned how to conserve heat by stuffing paper into their shirts, twisting fabric at the wrists and ankles to trap warmth, and rotating damp garments during the night hours so nothing stayed wet long enough to sap body temperature. These same strategies, honestly, still apply today when you're improvising insulation. Anything that traps air, prevents heat escape, and keeps moisture off the skin can be absolutely life-saving. A seventh lesson came from watching how guards responded to confidence versus desperation. The men discovered that, appearing composed often led to less harassment. Desperation, on the other hand, attracted abuse. Guards targeted anyone who looked broken. Maintaining posture, moving with calmness and speaking steadily became, a survival shield. This remains a vital strategy for hostage survival training, and honestly, even everyday high-pressure environments maintain external control to prevent becoming a target. The final lesson was that hope had to be engineered, not just assumed. Guards tried to strip away the idea of a future, but prisoners shared news, built covert routines, and kept small goals alive. Hope wasn't a feeling. It was constructed discipline. For you, today, this means establishing tangible milestones during any long hardship, setting objectives you can measure, and refusing to let your mind drift into fatalism. These 8 lessons weren't just theories. They were extracted from the harshest environments of the Second World War and refined through necessity and pain. If you value deep historical insight and want more content like this, subscribe to the channel, share this video with fellow history buffs, and keep these lessons alive where they can still matter.